How are you?
Perfect. I'm doing okay. How about yourself?
Good. I'm so sorry about yesterday.
Oh, it happens. I mean, it just all kind of the whole day was just, uh, you know, uh,
The
um,
funny thing is that I was on a call with someone that missed our booked call
oh,
when I
really?
was supposed to be on with you.
Jeez. It
I
happens,
was like,
know,
what is happening today? I was like, is there some sort of like retrograde something going on?
right? It was all around, I think, for everyone like that.
So
Well,
you must be enjoying COVID times then.
nah, I mean, I'm in Chicago, so at least we have pretty much everything open, so everything's a go out here.
Yeah,
It's
how is
not as.
it? One of my colleagues I work on a fund with is in
Mhm.
Chicago, and I haven't asked her. She missed this week's call, so I didn't hear how things are in Chicago. Things are improving there.
Yeah, no, things have been pretty good. Everything's been open for a while, so gyms and everything else. They've done a good job to kind of manage it and contain it and keep the numbers steady. So yeah, I think since I was in LA until July, until I moved back here, back home to Chicago. So I know in LA when I was leaving and moving out, there's just everything was shutting down again, and things were just kind of locked up. But I came out here, and it's been as good as I guess you can hope for.
Wow, that's a lot. You moved during COVID.
Yeah, that's something cross country too. So,
Were you planning on moving back, or was
um,
that a COVID like thing? You know what I mean?
I
Like
think
it
it was
made
a COVID thing. Yeah, it was a COVID thing because it just, as you know, a lot in the industry, production stopped and nothing was really going on in in that sense. So for me, it was just being out here with family. Right out the year. I think that's kind of the best decision for me. And I can do this kind of Zoom stuff. So I've been doing press junkets like that. So I feel like there wasn't too much I could do at least for the rest of the year in LA. Then we'll see
yeah,
after the holidays.
it is nice to have quality time with family,
Yeah,
if you can, and like try and take advantage of whatever that is, even though it seems stressful, like it's
totally.
like if you can do it in a way that is sort of not stressful.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I just try to come out as often as I can, but my mom's been going through some health issues recently, so it's been good to actually it kind of fit in it perfectly how that I'm here for what I need to be, and I think kind of everything worked out. So I'm just gonna stay here for the rest of the year and see what happens start of 2021.
Yeah, like can't we all want to press fast forward?
Yeah. I mean, it's just been crazy out there in LA. I got many friends with all the forest fires and the smoke, and there's an earthquake again last week. I mean, it's just been wild from what I've
That's
been
a
hearing.
little apocalyptic, right at the beginning,
Yes.
you know.
Seeing a picture of like the sun being like all red, it looks like Mars. I'm like, you don't need a sound stage or anything. Like, you can just record and film outside pretty much.
Yeah, my daughter was kind of freaking out about how beautiful it was. Meanwhile, I'm like, I've never seen that before. This is
Scary,
terrifying.
when
Yeah.
you try to recreate this stuff, digitally and for the movies when things are kind of happening naturally that way, it just makes you think twice.
I wasn't planning on being in Red Dawn, the remake. Like, what is happening?
Well, at least, most important part is, safety and health. So if your family's doing all right and everyone kind of around you, that's all you can ask for these days.
I know, 100%. Yeah, it's been
Tell,
it's
tell me
nice.
more upbeat stuff. We can focus on the film arc. I love the name of it. It's so catchy.
That is very upbeat, actually. Our name, I love that our name is upbeat.
Yeah, the film arcade. It makes you think of fun games and just like a fun. Like when I think of arcade, I just have good memories of like the '90s, and going to arcades and combining that with film. I think it's
I've never asked back in Miranda, who like started Film Arcade. I've never asked them where the name came from, which is strange because I've known them both for years. But I kind of have enjoyed the fact that the carousel part of it, which I'm running,
right.
is sort of a symbol of independent film a little bit, like
Hmm.
how it feels like when you do get to release it as an independent filmmaker, it just feels like you're on this kind of crazy ride, but it's like, okay, so who's going to pull you off and like get your film into distribution and type thing, like who's going to be pick the right horse, right, like to have the
Right.
best ride, right? um and and I like that Carousel, which, you know, I'm sort of jumping right into it, is like an option that gives the filmmaker an idea of some sort of control of that, which is something that, you know, I've been, as a filmmaker, I've had that deal put in front of me that's like, I really don't want to take that deal. Like, what are my alternatives? And not really knowing early on. And like, service deals aren't new, but I think to a lot of filmmakers, they just have seen the options of selling at big festivals and like, or getting the deal with Netflix or a streamer now. And you don't know what all of the alternatives are. So like, we just want to be there to be one of those alternatives, and hopefully know that filmmakers can have the ability to control their, you know, their financial destiny with their distribution if they want to. Like, it's not like a forced thing. It's more of a, that's fantastic if you got a huge deal at Sundance, but know that we're here if you didn't, you know. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think now with these times, it's interesting you mentioned that, because a friend of mine directed this film, Antoine Lee, called Followed, and it was over the summer. I got to like #1 in a, you know, box office over. And I remember when he did the film in 2018, when he first premiered at the Burbank Film Festival. And I was like one of the only media people there to see it. And he waited 2 years to find the right distribution. And he didn't want to settle for anything. It was just interesting talking throughout the last 2 years, you know, when is the movie going to be released? I mean, it's already done and everything, you know, and he kind of waited 2 years, and finally kind of it all, you know, worked out where he finally got a deal right before COVID started. And then bam, you know, COVID started, and his movie was one of the only kind of like limited releases that were going on during, you know, May and June. So it's been interesting to hear kind of his perspective, looking for distribution and kind of waiting for the right moment and finally getting that out there.
There's fear, right? That you have to go too fast or too slow, or
right.
wait
What do you
till
do?
minutes, you know, like, and that's the thing. I think like, it's like a baby, like, you know what I mean? Like, your film is your baby, you know what's best for it. And it's up to you to make those mistakes with your parenting, and like, oh, like where you take that baby, what you usher them to, and where they become. And obviously opportunity lies in that too, and execution that helps provide you with some of those options. But it's so interesting when you see really great movies like, you know, like Peanut Butter Falcon, that like chose the service deal option, which I know they had other offers, and maybe not offers that even like were remotely good enough for them to like even engage with, but like them taking in their own hands and look at the success that had. I mean, that's a really, it's a kind of a big example for me to say, because I'm like, that, you know, it has big names in it, and we're looking at smaller films too that don't necessarily have that. But I think it's just an example of like, people didn't even realize that was a service deal. Like, so I mean, people in the industry know that more, but like, for instance, like, you know, my best friend in Toronto doesn't know that, like, you know, that's how that was done. So,
I mean, what you guys do basically, you kind of package the whole product together, the distribution, the promotion, which is another key, because you get distribution, but then, hey, we got to promote the film to have it out there so people know it's coming out and what it is too. So it's for those that don't maybe understand certain things, you know, kind of the moviegoer or the, you know, person at home, like there's so many layers a filmmaker and a production team have to go through to finally really get the movie out there. Distribution is not the end of it. It's just the kind of the beginning after all the promotional things come out. And then tell me about that process, kind of doing a one-stop shop for it all. Cause I think that's really, that would be helpful for a filmmaker, not having to kind of deal with all the avenues and negotiations with a variety of different things. And what you guys provide is kind of like an all-in-one.
Well, I'm hopeful that filmmakers will sort of look at this like this option as something to consider when you're making your budget, right? Mm-hmm. So, for instance, you know, as I've said, and, you know, I'll say it many times over, I'm so happy if you got the distribution, placement, and deal that you want. But to be left with like hat in hand and this beautiful film that you've made and you put your heart into, and not have planned to have at least even $5, $10, $15, even $20,000, money that you would spend on a location, you know, or your insurance, of course, that you need, or whatever. Like just that amount of money, which is still a lot of money, because I think every penny in a movie is a miracle, but especially an independent film. But
Totally.
like having that set aside for you to be able to create your own like networking campaign, like any release you want to do for an award, like contention. Obviously a lot of these things are changing, but it's also, that's a big part of it, a lot of these things are changing. So it may come in a cycle when you're going to festival that year and the deals aren't that great. Like maybe you want to have that alternative to be able to say, my investor out of my $1 million film gave me 1.1 instead, so that we have $100,000 to like do like a huge campaign for this film. Like, because those dollars, if they're marketed properly and you know your film best and can help guide that with the expertise and vendors that we use, then like we're going to try and help guide you to get the best financial return you can have for your film. Obviously we always know that there's natural disasters that happen with that, like just hurricanes, what's going on. And like I released a film, or put a film out at the worst Sundance ever on 2009. It was like right after the 2008 financial collapse. It was like, articles have been written about how terrible it was, you know what I mean? And it's like, didn't mean my film was terrible, but it didn't sell for big dollars because of that reason, right? And so
out of your control stuff,
yeah, out of your control stuff happens. So therefore it's part of the plan. For me, it's a different kind of insurance. People have talked about incorporating COVID into your budget. You need to incorporate this one-stop shop idea. And what we're trying to do is, be a boutique aggregator. We're not necessarily taking in hundreds and thousands of films just to like push them out. We want to be there for filmmakers and help advise them in whatever way they want and be as transparent as possible. Therefore, breaking it all down and saying like, okay, well, if you want us to consult with services for this theatrical release, or for this, virtual screening, whatever it may be, then we can have those add-ons and you can have your a la carte menu instead of feeling like you've wasted money putting it into some marketing dollars that you don't even know what those marketing dollars were actually broken down for, really. Like this is you actually choosing every penny, like you did with every penny of your production budget. So I hope it will be empowering, and I hope movies will find the financial return that they so much would like to see in very small movies, now that it feels like people are screening content in a different way. And we know that'll continue even after COVID ends. Like people are creating new habits right now. So hopefully, Film Arcade Carousel is one of those great options that filmmakers, if they know about it, are prepared for. So that's part of my, education in starting this company as well.
Yeah. How do you plan on kind of just getting the word out about you? Is it kind of more like an insider thing, like in the industry it's more known, or how do you kind of plan on, kind of putting the company's name out there so it's more widely kind of known as like a total option, for these indie filmmakers? Because these days, I mean, my goodness, like this is the time of the indies, this generation now with streaming and everything, and people being able to shoot movies on cell phones, literally, so an outlet like yours becomes a big option for a lot of these lower budget films that, let's be honest, get produced a lot and end up sometimes making a lot of money and gaining a lot of traction and following. How do you kind of plan on marketing your company to these a lot of filmmakers?
It's a lot of personal reach out, really. We are a small company, but I do have people helping me, my colleagues. We're searching through festivals and trying to let people know. And, a lot of the online festivals are still going strong, as strong as they can be without the physical presence of people. So we're trying to support that by reaching out to filmmakers and hitting them up directly. Now, obviously, it's all about timing because people are waiting and seeing what kind of offers they get out of these. But from the smallest to the biggest of festivals, just looking for any film, and also internationally, looking at films, like, because there's so many amazing, such an appetite for international
Oh
film,
yeah, certainly.
that you can find the smallest of gems that maybe are not getting the best North American offers, so it's an exciting prospect to be doing a lot of like international outreach as well. And to be honest, I'm getting like super personal about it, which is sort of me as a filmmaker in general. I've started to notice as I'm doing these personal reach, I get like lost in looking at the films and like, and also wanting to like say something really personal to each filmmaker when I'm reaching out and saying, this is a film that if you have the opportunity, I'd love to like tell you about what Carousel does and like you to consider us. It's exciting to me at the idea that if there's some flavor of personal reach out, that someone might actually understand what we're doing as well. So
Mhm.
I like to do it that way as much as possible. And then obviously, publicist wise, we're trying to do reach out to have conversations and being part of like distribution panels and stuff like that, which, Film Arcade's been a North American theatrical distributor for a while. So, it's the name is known, but Carousel and what we're servicing is not known as well,
Uh-huh. So it's
so
kind of the addition
a
to
lot.
the film arcade in a sense, a Carousel part.
Yes, absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When we look, I mean, the
Oh, it's
landscape.
broken on our website. Sorry, Jim. It's totally broken down, like on the website under Carousel. It
Uh-huh.
has it broken down, so it's very transparent for costs and things like that.
Well, that's good. That's absolutely important. The industry's just constantly changing. I think more so than ever in the last like decade or so, just like with technology, with social media, with everything. I mean, I remember just by the time I was in this industry, how many times and things have changed on a grand scale. And whether it's something like COVID forcing or just in general with new kind of technology coming out so rapidly. How do you feel like for what you do, the times now, are they fitting the most? Is this something that you wouldn't be able to accomplish or be as in a forefront maybe like 15, 20 years ago as now? Do you feel like this is the time to do these kinds of things with obviously all the filmmaking? And look, we had, like you mentioned, international film, and Parasite won Best Picture, which is kind of crazy to think, maybe like 15, 20 years ago. How do you feel? Is this the time to do this now? Like, is this the best time to be, doing what Carousel is doing? Or maybe would have worked maybe based on what I'm asking like 15, 20 years ago? Or is this the time that something like this
Well,
really would take off?
it was happening on some level, and and Film Arcade itself has serviced the studios as well for some of their smaller releases. But I do think that now it's like incredibly a special time because there's so many more platforms that are popping up too. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
there's the majors that everyone knows, but then also like I feel like now things will build and there'll be even more, which is a hard thing to navigate. I find it overwhelming to navigate. Like, okay, where should I go now? Especially when I have a certain concentrated amount of time for when I'm looking for content. Like, I'm maybe half asleep and then COVID, like, have two kids. So, like, you're just like, okay, unless you told me about it, like, I'm having a hard time, like, figuring out where to think and where to go. And should I go to, Seed and Spark to watch something, or, I like Seed and Spark, so that would be something that maybe I would go to, but not everybody would know what Seed and Spark is, right? Like, that's outside the industry as well. So navigating all of this kind of like where to watch is making it a more exciting time to be able to service, because also as the increase, as I feel like indies are going to happen more now. Everyone's nimble and people are saying, oh, there's no production going on, but we all know there is production going on, and like people are making exciting things and making moves. And I felt like TIFF was really exciting. Some of the panels that I watched too, and like people talking, like people are going ahead, and I feel like there's like an indie spirit that's strong that could help a lot of these films get out there. So to have that service option and to know about it, I think that's the key, to know about it too, because a lot of people also will, when you first say service, like people are afraid of it too.
Yeah.
Like they think it feels like your film perhaps failed, like in not selling in some huge way. And I really would love to change that landscape. And I feel like this is a time for that. It could be a very exciting time. Not every film has been made to make tons of money, but that doesn't mean it can't see some of it, some or all or more of its money come back, and you
Sure.
help power that. So,
I feel like indies have become kind of muddled. Like you guys deal with 2 million and under, right? The budgets usually for.
well, yeah, although we've had some higher budget films come to us. Well,
Mhm.
we're more than happy to service something bigger, but it was more art house and things like that, so it was in our wheelhouse.
It's crazy now to think that, like you mentioned, kind of like Peanut Butter Falcon, that's got major names, but it's considered an indie. In the past, when you thought of indies, it's kind of like no budget and unknown actors. You just kind of make it up, and see what happens. But now indies have become literally, they're littered with stars, and there's so much word about them these days that you can find out about them. They're not hidden. How has the indie scene kind of changed in your perspective, like over the years that you've noticed? And I mean, are we getting to a point where we're blending in almost mainstream? Because I mean, the big studios are, now they're in competition. They're not in control of everything anymore. I mean, these indies obviously have major stars and they look the part. Sometimes you can't distinguish, is this an indie or is this, an actual studio film, because of how well they're made. What's your kind of observation over the years of what you've seen and where we're at now, and what's really an indie anymore in a lot of ways, because visually it's hard to distinguish for a common, moviegoer in a sense, when it's got major names and it looks like it was produced, with a $50 million budget, even though it was a few million.
And well, that's always the challenge. A lot of indies, it's whether you want to look like an indie or you're trying to look like you're
Mm-hmm.
more expensive than you are too, which I mean, I think filmmakers will always enjoy that challenge. So, and take it, and run with it. But it's interesting when you're asking about what is the definition of an indie film, now, because I don't think it's necessarily changed, except for what's happened is that a lot of the studios stopped making indie films or supporting indie films in the way that they were over the last, like, I don't know, like 10, 12 years, right? Like things have
Mm-hmm.
changed a lot, and it shows in the movie theaters and the way that things are distributed, as well as like when it comes to like the streamers coming in, because you do feel lost a little bit in the last few years, like when you're like searching out that indie that you really want, like how many of them are truly getting made and financed, it feels like you're saying, because you're just fine, but they're still being made, right? So, and now I feel like people are, again, it's that switch. People are like now watching so much and consuming from home that there's a lot more coming out in the streaming, but I feel like it's an opportunity for people to be like, what is missing? Like, what can I not find, and what can we
Mm-hmm.
make more of? And it's not necessarily just the contained thriller, because even though people love them because it sounds great in COVID either, like,
Mm-hmm.
um, there's so many more options to that right now, and I'm excited about what is going to come with. I don't know if I'm really answering your question, but what the
Oh,
definition is, because
yeah.
I still
No, I
feel
think
like
you are.
under 20 million sounds weird, because that's what I think what it's defined as technically, but like it's really, for me, like an indie film is like if it's financed by people independently, but that can be like, outside of a studio, people can do that for like $100 million films if they wanted to, but
Yeah. I feel like we've gotten to a point where all these, like, I feel like every week we have a new streaming platform starting, Peacock or whatever it is, Quibi. There's so many streaming platforms. It gets overwhelming. I mean, I can imagine, just even for the person at home, like, which one do I subscribe to? What do
that
I,
remind you when television all of a sudden went from like 13 channels to like 4,000?
right? And it's like, oh my God, that whole thing got lost in translation. Are we in a sort of maybe content, uh, overdrive, in a sense where it's overwhelming? Like, how do you almost pick out? It's always going to boil down to the, obviously, the story and the quality of the production, the writing, the directing, the acting in it too. But but how do you kind of approach that now with so much content available that it could be overwhelming? What does someone pick to watch? Do you feel like even what you do you go with it like with a very open mind, or is there a certain genre or style that you prefer, to
Oh no,
comfort?
I mean, I love like every genre, and like I am a little bit of a scaredy cat. I get scared of horror movies, but I will. But that doesn't mean I love the value of them. So I'm like
Sure.
it's more just that I'm terrified. I'll watch them at noon when the sun's out or something. But
When it's
that's
not
why.
like March, when it's a regular sun.
Yeah, yeah. No, like I'm a nervous person when it comes to, like, it depends on the scare too, right? Like thrillers aren't for some
Totally.
reason this terrifying to me, but I know everyone always wants me to make their horror movie once I made the invitation, because it was so scary or whatever, and I'm like, I'm not really the scary girl. I'm like, I'm not.
But you know how to lead their way,
Yes,
how to,
yes.
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
mind making them. Sitting in the theater at the premiere, I was terrified actually, because I'm like, oh my god, I have to watch in the theater. Um, Sorry, going back to your question. Now I forgot what your question was.
Just like with all the content out there, like how do you
Oh,
sometimes go with your gut and in a sense what feels comfortable to you? Because there's a lot I'm sure to sift through too. Like
yeah.
is do you want to produce everything that comes to you, or sometimes maybe it's not the vision you can do exactly whatever for it that they would want, because there's always kind of the battle of the minds and the visions. They're creatives, right? A lot of people. So how do you kind of approach that? Are we, in a sense, it's a two-part question, are we in a content overload in a sense, and how do you
Yeah.
view that
Well,
with the work you do too?
well, I do look at it because I'm a producer as well, and
Mhm.
work with Cold Iron Pictures, our sister company, and the Cold Iron has always been very perspective driven and remains that. Like if it's a new and fresh perspective they're interested in, it doesn't matter uh, what uh, what the genre of the story is. It really is driven from uh, indie and perspective, really. As far as like the glut of content, I look at it as how I'm overwhelmed when I walk into a bookstore, right? Like I want to read every single book that's there. I'm upset that I can't read them all. I'm insistent that they're all fabulous because I tend to be positive. And like, how am I going to navigate that? And then maybe like start sweating, you know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh my god, I just kind of want to, which one.
Yeah.
And then so I try not to get too overwhelmed when like looking at it. Hello.
There's some kind of internet issue as expected in a lot of ways.
I'm like tech, so great. But at least it's not like I was on the phone just rambling. I like knew I lost you.
You were exactly. It took you you were doing such a great analogy about the bookstore and the options there too, and I was like right in the middle of it, and then
I was like, I try not to get too overwhelmed, I think is what I said, and then I like
yeah.
lost you. I'm like, yeah. So it comes down to like, I'll look at anything and everything as much as I can. Like, but I agree with you that it feels more overwhelming, like like with all of the platforms, right? But
Mhm.
I try to look at it in that TV way that I mentioned earlier, also with the books, like just that it's gonna find you if you're going to look for it, and like there it's just like there's a story for everyone, there's room for everyone. Saying that only this many films should be made by this many people or these kind of people, like sort of lately everyone's been trying to break that down and change that, and it's
Yeah.
there's truth to it, that like I never want to say, oh, there's too much of anything, because you never know what perspective is going to leap out. Like whether it all can be monetized is like another situation, right? Like, but also that's part of the reason why we started Carousel, because it's like, if you want the opportunity to have your movie in your living room once you make it, then you keep it at home. If you need to have an aggregator put it up on iTunes or Google Play or Amazon for you, so you can have transactions and your family and friends are the ones that are buying it, not just everyone else in the world, at least that's an opportunity for your film to be seen, right? Which is what everybody wants, right? So at a base level, as long as we're providing that opportunity, and you want to help find your niche audience, we want to try and help you find that as well. So, you know.
Has the closure of theaters like really affect what you do particularly? Because I know indies, don't usually, not half the time, maybe they'll end up in theaters. Other times there's other distributions through VOD or whatnot. How much has that kind of impacted what you do, the closure of theaters? And do you kind of foresee, I don't know, in a sense, I wouldn't say the death of theaters, but a kind of a change of direction maybe away from them? Or you feel like once things settle down, people are going to be packing up theaters again? I'm kind of curious in your professional sense, how it impacts you, and kind of from the producer in you, what do you kind of view that, the theaters kind of, closure and not being available?
Well, I think it's going to spread out okay, the theaters in itself, I was going to say, I think it's going to make people change, as we talked about habits earlier too. Like there'll be people that'll be like, no, I'm good with my living room. Like, I don't want to go to the theater, but maybe they'll pay for it to see it at home because they like movies that much and they used to go to the theater or something. I think the people that like really love going to the theater will, like my daughter is 8 years old and she said that she was hoping that Mulan would come out in the theater so she could see it because of the way the trailer looked, right? Like, oh, that would be a fun one to see with my friends. And I actually thought, oh my God, did I program you to say that? Like, are you my daughter? Like, I was like, I know what you mean, because she wants to have that theater experience. She wants to have popcorn. She wants to have community and just totally. And have an experience. I mean, she's bored to death. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to the whole like technology side of it all, like not to say that it's not technology in a theater. I think that theatrical, like, and maybe again, as I've mentioned, I'm positive. I like to think that it will live forever because I can't imagine not watching movies in the theater. It's definitely changed, as you asked about my job, like with us putting out theaters, there's putting movies in theaters. That's not happening. And the opportunity for people to do that is, I think, universally sad and like making everyone a little bummed out. But, people, the virtual screening of it all it can be exciting. And the idea of drive-ins coming back.
Oh, like, well, that's another aspect of it. Maybe one thing kind of moves the shift, because at least in the Chicagoland area, there's like, they popped up a bunch of drive-ins over the summer. I think like 4 or 5. And there's been actually like 2 that have been maintained throughout the years. So it's like, they're picking up business big time. Like I try to see what's going on there. It's all sold out too. So that's a shift too. I mean, in the sense, drive-ins, you think that could kind of attract a new viewing ways of screening and premiering movies at a drive-in and working with the, drive-in operators too? Yeah,
it's absolutely like, it's exciting to see that come back and like people rediscover that. I mean, the first time I feel like the first time I remember being in a drive-in, maybe that was the second time. I remember seeing like Gremlins and like that just being like the coolest thing ever. Like, and maybe seeing it a little too young, like, and like getting scared, but like how fun is that experience?
Yeah.
Even in your car with your cousin or whoever, like that. I'm very happy that something like that is having a resurgence, and at the same time, very anxious for things to go back to normal and people have the opportunity to be in theaters. I have fears about real estate and like the larger things that are going on in the world, but hopefully there'll be a bounce back to theaters and we'll be able to offer that in a bigger way. I mean, some theaters are open, so if
in Chicago, they're pretty much
wants it. It's not awards qualifying right now required. So when that is reinstilled, which I'm sure they'll support the theaters and do that again, then next year, I would say 2021, they'll probably be asking for that to be a requirement to play in a couple of theaters. So if you want to do that and have your film, within your own release, then you can have those options with us. So we have that to offer, and I certainly hope that people will be taking us up on it again.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that sense. I mean, in my area, all the theaters are pretty much open at this point, but I still feel like I haven't been, but I'm like on the verge of going. Like I feel like because when you look at like especially the AMC's and stuff, you see it's pretty empty. And I know coming from LA, there was one big shift for me because in Illinois, the theaters usually weren't packed, but like when you're living in LA, every night of the week, you're talking about like a Wednesday night at 11 p.m. It's packed. You can't find seats. And in Chicago, for whatever reason, because I guess people are drawn to going to sports events or bars. It's a little bit of a different social climate. There's always available seats in theaters, but now when I'm seeing, I'm like, they are distancing and closing off seats, but they're pretty empty. I'm like, I go to the gym every day, and I think I would actually feel pretty safe at a theater because there's more people at my gym, I guarantee you, on a daily basis than at a theater.
Well, it's also about what's being released too right now, right? Like they've held back releases on things, so you're maybe not rushing to see what's in there, but really supporting what's in there is like obviously something that everybody wants to do. It's just whether it's this weird, there's obviously like culture of fear stuff with certain things over other things, right? Oh, it's safer to go to the drive-in, so just go to the drive-in. But then people are, if you're not going to the drive-in, like just like theaters are open, so like try and go to them, but it's always, as we've said, safety and health is priority, and everyone's like mental health and physical safety is like just as important as
totally
like deciding whether they want to go to a theater or not. Like, I leave it up to every individual person. I'm just again an advocate for trying to keep the industry like healthy and alive and robust, and that's difficult for every industry right now. So.
No question. And like you mentioned, mentally, I think it's good to go out, whether a drive-in, movie theater, like I had the AMC pass, so I would try to go to 2 to 3 movies legitimately a week when I was in LA. Because, I
actually thought, Jim, that you probably would have seen Tenet in a theater in Chicago already.
I know I should. Well, that's the movie I want to really see. So I think it might be this weekend. Like I'm looking at the drive-ins are pretty much sold out, which is kind of like they are doing really well out here. They're booming, and they're playing a mixture of a lot of old movies too, for sure, classics, but maybe like a sprinkled in 1 or 2 newer releases. But they're also in an interesting way here. The drive-ins are now doing like concerts, a lot of virtual concerts for comedies. Like I've never seen this before. They're doing stand-up comedy. They're having a stand-up comedian.
That's amazing.
Doing it live. So they're doing, instead of like doing it at a comedy club, they're literally doing a comedy show at a drive-in with it airing on the screen, and they having a stage literally for the comedians to perform. So, I mean, I was kind of blown away by that. And yeah, I guess that's the thing. So comedians are touring drive-ins now around the country and doing
concerts. Cause I'm from Toronto originally, and you're like Canadian sister city to Chicago.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of similarities.
And there's the drive-ins were popping up, but my stepfather was going to a concert. It got canceled because of rain, unfortunately. It was too bad, but still, it's been like the sunniest summer there ever. So it's just, of course, that was the one night that happened.
Of course,
but it's like it's very cool. Some of like the creativity that's coming out of it. So
yeah. I think it's like, one door closes, the other opens, but like through one thing, I think we kind of, in the industry itself, seeing different PR people, things are just a creative industry, and people are being creative in a lot of ways, how they're bringing the entertainment and creating it in that sense, and delivering the way they can. I think that could be an option, at least going forward. We're hoping things get back to normal, but at least now maybe we do have an option of a drive-in, which is cool. Because I was lucky enough to be going through one, because we had one in the Chicagoland area for years, and it was kind of like a preserved space, and like a lot of people wouldn't know about it, but like I'd go on dates and all that, and you have a double feature, and you bring your food. It's just a great experience, so I'm kind of glad that they're popping up, and people who, of a generation who weren't even used to it or, or never heard of it now get to be exposed to it. So that's kind of cool in that sense.
Yeah, it is very cool. I know.
Well,
you're making me want to go to the movies.
I know. I'm hyping myself up. I think I'm gonna finally do it.
Text me after you see Tenet and tell me how
I will. I will let you know how it goes. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go this weekend and finally check it out, because like I said, it's that nostalgia. Not only nostalgia, but like me being a frequent moviegoer, I've had a void in myself.
Yeah. What were you doing to fill the time? Obviously, you can watch it at home, but it's weird not to have
It's
that.
weird because I like the theater experience. For me, especially when I was living in LA, it's, I don't have family there. It's kind of like, you kind of do a lot of things by yourself. And for me, it was movies, just going to the movies. So I'm constantly checking out what's coming out, whether I'm at a premiere or screening, but I'd still want to sometimes avoid a premiere screening just to go on my own and have that experience, sitting in a movie theater and just kind of watching it on my own, whatever, late at night or whatnot. And that's been a void. So I feel like the more, if that's available and you can feel kind of normal again, why not do it? And I feel like
I miss the arc light.
that's another good one too. I mean, yeah, I guess LA still hasn't opened the theaters yet, right? From what I've checked. Yeah.
Not
Hope
yet.
it happens soon. I mean, at least,
Hopefully, I think things are maybe improving a little. I try not to look every day right at the moment, just because otherwise it's like, it's a little bit much.
Yeah. Well,
Just a stain long term.
I'll go and I'll let you know what the experience is like. I'll probably write up on it. Well, Lindsay, I'm glad we made this happen. I had a lot of questions for you. I probably have dozens of more. I just think it's really cool when I heard about what you guys are doing, and kind of, getting to talk to a lot of directors and producers and writers. I have like a special interest in a lot of the kind of the creators and the behind the scenes people, and to hear, about different ways like productions are made, to see what you guys do. And I think that's really cool and neat, especially the filmmakers I know. I think, a lot of them could take up a service like yours in that way, when we're talking about distribution of a lot of ways. So I think you guys are doing a great job.
Anyone that ever has questions, like, I feel like now that's the thing that freaked me out the most, was that I never knew like how to spend the dollars if you were to give them to me, like, and now that education, even for myself as a filmmaker, has been like, something that I just would love to instill in everyone. And like, you learn everything in production, like, you should have security, to watch your equipment overnight when you're an indie. Like, people don't like budget that at first or whatever. Like,
you're in trouble.
Like, oh wait, we didn't get a parking lot to put the equipment in, or you know what I mean? Just like the funniest of things that you learn when you're making the smallest of films. Then knowing how it's going to be spent so that it's not frivolous is like really something that I'm open to having conversations with people and like breaking it down with them and saying, like, if they were to ask, like, what do you think? I can bring in my colleagues and we can say, well, this is a plan that we think that you should follow. And then if you want to alter it and you don't have enough money, or if you have more money, this is what we would do. So,
yeah. I mean, I think overall, it seems like a cost-saving move for a lot of them, because time is money in this industry, and one day of setbacks and stuff, you're losing budget. You don't have the luxury, especially on indies, when you have 14 days. I mean, I've heard all stories, 10 days to shoot a movie, just insane, amount of how fast paced it is, having someone to overlook everything, keep it under control, and making sure you just get to focus on the work, and direct it and just your project. I think that really not only is a cost saving thing, but it really saves a lot of headaches too. So that's why I think you guys are really a cool business model that really, I hope, a lot of people, especially filmmakers, take you guys up on it.
I hope so too. It'll be a really fun ride on that carousel.
Yeah, no, I think you're gonna have some really interesting experiences, and that's
when the business changes 10 years from now, we can name it a different ride after that, like the roller coaster.
Everyone's jumping on that one too. Exactly. Well, seriously, thank you for taking the time and having a fun conversation and giving me perspective, just kind of like what's going on and the interesting things that sometimes I didn't even know about, to hear from someone that's right in it doing it. So that's really cool.
Jim, I love your site too. It's amazing work.
Appreciate that. Thank you. At least I can keep up now with it,
Yeah, I imagine that's a bit of a slog when you have other stuff going on.
When going out to events and stuff versus just, being kind of at home and doing a Zoom, it's much quicker to edit than going out shooting and then doing that. But I love the kind of stuff, and this is the kind of thing that appeals to me. I love getting some inside info, and I feel like I want my site to be well-rounded, so people can hear a lot of different
it is. good work. I'm like,
I appreciate
I was
that.
admiring. I'm like, it's very nice. And our publicist Hilda told me about it, and had like lovely things to say too. So
Oh, she's great. I've worked with her in the past, and I think she's really good at what she does, and definitely, and I like that she takes up a lot of creative things like that, because sometimes just publicists are stuck in one thing or just like a one genre or one sort of production, but it's cool to kind of expose yourself to different things and different, you know, views and perspectives and
yeah.
backgrounds of the industry, because this industry is huge. It's not what you only see on screen. It's all that happens around it and behind it.
Yeah, it's that bookstore.
Yep. I love that analogy. It's a great one.
Like bookstores have made me sweat for years. And the library, when I was little, I'd be like, oh my God, I want to read everything. I can't read everything. Like I
would
freak
spend
out.
hours at bookstores or libraries. It's just addictive. You go there and you just kind of feel stuck.
And they're so pretty. Books are so pretty and lush and like, just like, a delicious movie with some popcorn.
And that's the thing. That's kind of like the movie theater experience. Like you can never take away a library or bookstore experience because a Kindle just isn't the same. Just kind of flip it. I need the physical thing in my hand. I need to see the cover. I need to see it just a different thing to have it in your hands and see it in front of you instead of just scrolling like you're reading an article, online. It's an experience in that sense.
True. It's very true. I know. We can probably talk about this for hours, eh?
Sure. Yep. By the way, I love the Frozen dolls in the background and the
characters. Yeah. So this is my son's room actually, but it's my daughter's. But the first movie my daughter saw was Inside Out.
Yep.
In the theater, and she actually had the patience to watch it. She was only 3, and so she like loved all of the characters. So. We have all of them here on this bookshelf. She wanted them in my son's bookshelf. So
there you go. That's so awesome. And of course the books are right in the background. So it's so fitting on what we're talking about, in so many
That's
ways.
overwhelming too.
Well, I'd love to stay in touch. So anyway, the best way.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. Whether
we talk to a ton of filmmakers, so feel free to give them my contact.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I could definitely do that.
It's on our website, so like I like to be full disclosure. So just
Okay, so your contact information is there. I can reach out to you.
Yeah, Lindsay. No, sorry, that's not right. I was gonna do my Lindsay at Cold Iron Pictures. There's Lindsay at Cold Iron Pictures or L Lanzillotta at Film Arcade, which is like the harder one because my last name is like so annoying to spell, but. Either way, it's right there in on the carousel page. So.
There you go. I'll let you know how the movie experience is, and if I talk to any filmmakers, I'll definitely, believe me, I'll mention you guys if they haven't heard. So no question.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, and definitely stay healthy and for the family and you during these times, and things will get better. And I love your positivity.
Thank you. My best to your mom. I'll be having her in my thoughts for all good health.
Thank you so much. Well, I'll talk to you soon then.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.